with the big words, Lee. I hope this sounds alright. Try to adjust the volume so I'm a bit louder. Spread the knowledge some more. In any case, I don't have the opportunity to change the volumes. Cheers, Lee. Looks like a fairly big group for a Thursday afternoon. Alright, sounds good. So I promised a lecture on the now Indian province called Sikkim, which used to be its own country actually for hundreds of years. It was a country in its own right. Probably have to caveat all this with my lack of knowledge on the subject. This is more like a, I did my own research situation. So if you want actual knowledge, you should ask someone who knows stuff, or maybe go on TikTok, whatever the kids do these days. I'm not sure if I'm going to step on any toes politically with all this. I imagine there are probably a fair few grudges still held in the region, but I thought it was so interesting that I wanted to share it. Just I fell across a nugget a few weeks ago actually, that this Monday, April 14th, that was the 50th anniversary of the referendum where the population of Sikkim chose to disband the country, I guess you could say, and be annexed or swallowed by India. So that was April 14, 1975. And of course, when you hear that, you have to ask, why on earth would a country choose to disband itself, and why would 97% of the inhabitants, as it were, choose to be swallowed by another country? Of course, this kind of thing doesn't happen in a vacuum. So I was eager to dive down in history, and I found it was actually kind of a cool story. A lot of diplomacy, Cold War stuff going on. As you might imagine, I'd never heard of the country before, so this was all new to me. Looks like we're chasing this guy. Don't know what he's on to. Big power numbers. Oh, I took a few notes since I will have trouble remembering all this by heart. But Sikkim, small country, tucked in the northeast corner of India, south of Tibet, near Nepal, and what really turns out to be a geopolitical fault line during the Cold War. Oh. Better follow this. So I'm going to try to be fairly aggressive in this race, since that will be more of a challenge if I'm giving a lecture at the same time. Maybe too much. We'll see. Oh, I'll quiz you afterwards, Rob. So, small country, about a third the size of Wales. For you Americans, about the size of Delaware. So this country of Sikkim was described as kind of a stereotypical Himalayan fairy tale country. What you would imagine. I need some cold air. So of course Britain, the UK, had a big presence in the area until the late 40s, I believe, when India gained independence. So the Brits were actually kind of on a friendly footing with the Sikkimese king, and they helped might be a big word, but they played a part in maintaining the country's independence. They did bring in a lot of Nepalese guest workers, which turns out to play a big part in why the country was disbanded. So these Nepalese guest workers were not necessarily Sikkimese through and through, more aligned with India perhaps. So these Nepalese grew in numbers, and you have to note this wasn't a representative democracy in any way. They had laws that ensured that the old guard, the original inhabitants, had more of a voice in their democracy. So of course this is going to spark some unhappiness amongst the Nepalese part of the community. I have to say, one of the questions running through all this is what kind of dude the Sikkimese king was. It's hard to say. Was he a good guy? Was he a bad guy? Was he an alcoholic? Was he just a bad politician? It's hard to know. And if anyone should know, please comment, share the knowledge. Let's see what happens here. Looks like that guy down is pretty rough. Some big numbers, probably not legitimate, we'll see. Anyway, the question when India gained independence was, what should Sikkim do? A lot of other associate states, they became a part of India, but not Sikkim, not at first anyway. So to give you a bit of context, what happened around Sikkim is that China occupied Tibet in 1950. This of course worried India as well as Britain and the US. So actually, and we know this from the archives, CIA struck up a relationship with the Sikkimese royal family, so they have a presence there. The US wanted to impede the Chinese advances, of course, in the area. But China grew stronger, and Sikkim started to appear to be the weakest part of India's northern border to China. So India started becoming very, very interested in Sikkim. There's a couple of quotes later on. Let's see if we can bridge. This is not going as I hoped. But even though India were very interested in what was happening between China and Sikkim, they also didn't want to appear like colonizers. You know, the Brits just left, so the Indians were very sensitive to that. That will change later in the story. So tensions grow in the region, in the population. Fast forward to 1973, the King's 50th birthday. Massive protests spark. People in Sikkim have an opposition movement against the king. What they want is independence and more clean democracy. The king wants to maintain his own power and make sure that Sikkim remains a kingdom in its own right. So they share some goals, but not all. And this comes to a head on the king's 50th birthday. Guns are fired, people are looting police stations, organized by the opposition, from what we know. But the king insists on having a birthday party in his palace, while the guards are literally wrestling people off the lawn. So a fair bit of drama there. We actually know this from a Scottish woman who was a headmistress at a school in Sikkim, and she wrote some pretty outstanding letters coded in Scots so the censors wouldn't get to them. Very funny stuff. Very smart as well. Look up that lady. Can't remember her name, but the king could have asked India for help, of course, but he was very afraid that any approaching the Indians would mean that they would start to take over the country, so he didn't want that. Several days, protests and unrest. The king relents. So India swoops in, start to reform the constitution. So the protesters are happy. They organize a session in Parliament, held in English for some reason, which I guess about half the members didn't actually understand. So those might be the first serious signs that the Indians are up to something. What happened was the new constitution allowed Sikkim to seek representation in the Indian Parliament, which you'll note sounds positive, but in reality it's a step towards annexation, because obviously if Sikkim is represented in the Indian Parliament, that means they're not an independent country anymore. But everybody can see what's happening. It's like a lion with teeth made out of bureaucracy, spearheaded by infamous Indira Gandhi, which you probably know, if not anything by name. So China start piping up about Indian expansionism. Pakistan start piping up. So April 1974, India makes the big move. They start whisking away any would-be opposition leaders, and they start walling off Sikkim, keeping out the international press. They launch a squadron of soldiers on the palace and take it over in about 20 minutes. Killed one guard and put the king under house arrest while they got onto the dealings of creating a new constitution for the country or ripping up another one. You have to remember, during all this, the Cold War is going on. So, and this is Nixon times. So the US are friendly with China, but worried about the Soviets, which the Indians are as well. You would think that the US has the history of intervening when a small country annexes, when a big country annexes a smaller one. But the US wanted to get on India's good side and wanted to lure them away from the Soviets. What am I doing at the front? Nobody knows. But the US wanted to try and lure the Indians to their side, or at least make their confrontations with the Chinese a bit less of a worry, and of course sell arms to them as well. So at this point, Sikkim is really just a pawn in a Cold War game. And if anyone is seeing any parallels to things that are going on at the moment in the world of diplomatic gamesmanship, you're not mistaken, but that's an interesting side story. So the Indians took over the palace, put the king under house arrest, except he had a ham radio hidden in the palace. So he actually managed to put out a message that some other radio enthusiasts caught. So reports did start leaking into international media. But the trouble is, it's too late. Nobody really wants to mess with India. They're already a nuclear power at this point, and the whole South Asian area is volatile. This is also just around the Vietnam War, so a lot of diplomatic stuff going on. People not really willing to get into the fray for some small country. Actually, a little tidbit is the Sikkimese king was married to an American woman. So she, of course, was accused of being a CIA stooge. I don't know if that's true, but she definitely tried to speak to the US diplomatic system and have them advocate for Sikkim, get them into the United Nations or something. No one wants to chase the sky? Come on. Yeah, let's go. I don't know how people do this, speak and race. So, on April 10th, 1974, we're back. The Indians announced there will be a referendum, so people of Sikkim can choose what they want. Now, setting up a referendum at such short notice in a country with very inaccessible areas does seem pretty suspect, to say the least. Come election day, turns out They had some color coding going on, so everybody was given pink slips. They had to put in ballots. Voting was public, of course, so everybody at the voting station would know if you had said yes or no. Also, the yes ballot, to where you actually said yes, let's become part of India, was pink, as well as the slip, whereas the no ballot was white. And remember, pretty much, I don't know, half maybe of those 100,000 eligible voters were probably illiterate, so I'd be surprised if they had much of an idea about what was going on. Anyway, it ends in a landslide. 97% say they want to become part of India. 3% say no. Of course, this might be down to the fact that we have a lot of Nepalese in the population. They were a larger part of the population than the original population groups, or ethnic groups, what you call them. But even most of the Nepalese inhabitants, they didn't want the country to be annexed by India, it seems. So a lot of people wouldn't have known what they were voting for. But I really encourage you to look up the story. I've only described about a tenth of all the geopolitical shenanigans going on between the US and the UK, China, Russia, India, of course. A lot of backroom chatter going on. But fact of the matter is, today, Sikkim is a province, not a country. It's a part of India, and I would be really interested to know what people are feeling today, if there is any resentment, if the region is fully incorporated into India by now. The people who remember this are, of course, getting on a bit. So I, for one, haven't heard anything about a liberation movement or anything going on. So that's it. I am absolutely knackered. Looks like I'm still in the front group though. So that's good. One more chance to get a feather before we murder ourselves on the hill. Seems like a pretty big group. Let's get to the back, see how many we are. Got a couple of verified and pro people. This looks hard. Thanks, Lee. I don't feel I did the story justice. It really is fascinating. A lot of interesting characters, and just the whole Cold War setting adds a lot of spice. To the proceedings. I don't know how efficient I've been really. I've had my eye just on the front rider, that's all I can do while talking. Wind it down a bit now. See if I can get some rest for the punishment coming up. Looks like the front guy hasn't been flagged. Doesn't really matter though. Just here for a race and a lecture, of course. So this is the reverse KOM as far as I remember, which is a bit more evil than the forward one in that it includes part of the forward one and then just ends in agony. Yeah, I did, during the reading of the book I've been reading, I saw a lot of twists and turns and small details which really make me think about what's happening today and how different countries are aligning themselves and changing alliances as you go. I'm pretty sure in 10 or 15 years we'll be able to find even more obvious parallels. Another thing is all this uproar about countries and territories and borders. It's just because we live in a world now where borders are a lot more sacred than they used to be. Back in the old world, I think European borders pretty much changed by the day. Always a war going on or someone marrying someone else. Come on, Feather. Oh. Can't remember if I even got a feather at any point. Probably one or two. Oh well, here goes. See what's left. Turn left, feel bereft. was horrible. So please, think about Sikkim, not about this image right now. Yeah. Cheers, guys. That will have been pretty ugly, I guess. Remember, you can always rewatch this if you're going on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Get the lowdown on Sikkim. Or just listen to some Danish moaning, which is always good. This is the best part of this course, and it's not even on the course. Did I forget to start the duel? Oh no, I did. Flipping. Sorry, got so caught up in the lecture. Turn it off then. Yeah, it's hard to tell, Rob. I mean, he does seem like a nice bloke at times, but he also seems a bit like, apart from the alcoholism, he seems a bit like what we say in Denmark, a dog in a game of pins, an elephant in a china shop. Don't know why we have all those animal-themed metaphors, but I'm sure he's been a hoot to be around. Like classical music. Well, I think in his favor might have been that it was a very small country with, you know, with a Buddhist background, which always bodes for niceties. So if I had to choose one current or former king, apart from the Danish one, of course, he might be an interesting one to speak to. A funny detail from the book I read: we have a transcript of a conversation between Richard Nixon and Deng Xiaoping, where they're basically just sitting around lolling at what on earth is going on in Sikkim. Yes, it's a pity, but what do the Indians want? Nobody believes that the Russians will actually move into Sikkim. China wasn't all that interested. So Nixon is basically laughing at the whole thing because he doesn't get it. Maybe I should advertise the book I read. It's called Sikkim, Requiem for a Himalayan Nation, I think, written by a Scotsman. So one more point for the Scots. So I guess the score is India 1, Sikkim nothing, Scotland 1. Maybe actually Scotland 2 because of that headmistress from the story. She was very susceptible, oh sorry, very, what's the word I'm looking for? She had a good eye for politics and the way she writes in code to get around the censors. That's just brilliant stuff. So get the book for that, if nothing else. Alright, that's enough knowledge and sweat for today. Have a good one, guys. See you around.